For a few years now, Legends of Runeterra has been considered by many to be the core of Riot's storytelling, basically carrying League's lore while the rest of the company's projects are either abandoned unceremoniously or put on hold indefinitely. Unfortunately, with Riot Games being the company it is, that once beloved card game now languishes on a state bordering on death. The game itself has basically shifted gears entirely to focus on its half-baked roguelike element, and expansions are now limited pretty much exclusively to introducing champion cards for that mode only. Maybe one or two followers if we're lucky. Needless to say, any lore that once came with said expansions has been reduced to almost nothing as well. Indeed, it's lamentable that a game which has done so much to expand on the story of Runeterra has been left in such a miserable condition, considering the ways it furthered narratives for characters that had been left to languish for years, and even gave some much-needed overhauls in ways that League itself refuses to do so for some reason. Legends of Runeterra deserves all the praise it gets and then some, but unfortunately not everything the card game has put out over the years has been stellar. There are some champions who arguably ended up in worse conditions for their additions to the card game, and that's what we're looking at today. Those precious few examples that really would have benefited from a second draft as far as their presentation and narrative are concerned. The first example we'll be looking at today is probably the most well-known, Mordekaiser. Now, in terms of his overall story, nothing about Mord's portrayal in LOR is necessarily wrong. He's building an army of enslaved souls in his death realm while biding his time to return to the land of the living. Mord's apparently even got something of a cult working to revive him in Noxus. That all checks out. The issue is how LOR kind of fumbled the more minute details. To start, let's talk about Mord's appearance. Allegedly, the reason they changed his color scheme from green to blue was to help better differentiate Mordekaiser's soul magic from Viego's. I can kind of see where they're coming from, but this doesn't work for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, while there's not necessarily a hard rule that undead souls have to be that sickly green color, it's kind of been a key signifier between them and uncorrupted spirits who take on a more vibrant blue color. Making Mordekaiser and his minions blue sort of implies that they're more pure souls, despite the abundance of dark magic used to sustain their existence. It has also been said many times by many people that the shift from green to blue also just kind of winds up making Mordekaiser and his entire crew look like Xerath followers, which is not the best look when he's a villain that's meant to be on par with the Magus. The design of Mord's armor here is also kind of weird. Supposedly he's wearing a second suit that he made for himself in the Death Realm, but if he already has a physical vessel, then what's stopping Mordekaiser from launching his invasion already? To be honest, I feel like they really should have just given him his own arc that revolved around him returning, rather than just, having him still be in the Death Realm, but also still wearing his armor so people know it's Mordekaiser. Then there's the fact that his level 1 art shows him sitting on a throne, which might seem apt at first, considering that he's an undead tyrant, until you read Mordekaiser's short story. There, he smashes a throne that his followers made for him, seeing it as an insult. Mordekaiser is undead now. He doesn't tire and has no need to rest. So to him, the idea of sitting on a throne seems meaningless and redundant. It was a neat bit of characterization for the Iron Revenant that unfortunately just kinda got tossed aside here. So yeah, while I won't say LOR ruined Mordekaiser, it definitely didn't do him justice. Honestly, the guy deserved to have his own storyline, perhaps revolving around his return to the living world. Instead, he's just kind of relegated to the final villain of Neela's quest to go around picking fights with powerful entities. That wouldn't have even been an awful direction to go in if she maybe came to Noxus just as Mord was returning, but instead Neela just finds out about his armor somehow and goes to break it, even though he already has a second suit in the Death Realm. Seriously, what is going on with that? But let's shift our focus to another antagonistic character, Fiddlesticks. Now, in all fairness, Fiddlesticks kind of acts as the final nail in the coffin for the game, being the first POC exclusive character that set the middling standard for champions going forward. The Demon of Fear serves as the antagonist of LOR's final story arc at the time of this video, Dreamlit Paths. The story revolves around Fiddle invading the dreams of various characters and turning them into nightmares, but isn't that supposed to be Nocturne's thing? Fiddlesticks and Nocturne have had sort of an awkward relationship ever since the former's VGU, with both trying to occupy the role of demons that prey on fear. What was supposed to set them apart was the fact that Nocturne's approach to terrorizing mortals was more personalized. He preyed on people's individual phobias and traumas. While Nocturne did have a quote-unquote true form, if he could be dragged out into the physical world, the crux of his power came from the realm of dreams, where Nocturne could freely change into anyone or anything that his victims feared. LOR, and even the For Demacia story, show us that Nocturne can conjure physical apparitions of others' nightmares if there happen to be dreamers nearby. Fiddlesticks, meanwhile, represents a more primal fear. It is the monster in the woods, the thing under your bed or in your closet. It is the predator stalking you just out of sight, lurking in the shadows until it's ready to strike. Fiddlesticks is a creature you can never escape no matter how fast you run, and can seemingly never kill no matter how hard you fight. It's an ancient horror that predates humanity itself, something that frightens anyone and everyone on an instinctual level. Oh, and it turns out that Fiddlesticks can also just do everything Nocturne does as well, I guess. Invading dreams, taking the form of personalized nightmares, you get the idea. While you can make the argument this hurts Nocturne more overall, I feel like both champions kind of suffer as a result of this decision. I mean, one of the other facets to Fiddlesticks that makes it so uncanny is the fact that it is more primal than most of the other demons. It creates makeshift bodies for itself and can even mimic speech. But the Demon of Fear seems to have a very limited understanding of any of that. Its vessels are supposed to be a very crude approximation of living anatomy, and the words it screams are just things it hears its victims saying, but can't really understand. It doesn't really get mortals as anything beyond a food source, just as we can't properly understand it. So yeah, giving Fiddlesticks the ability to not only take on more comprehensible forms in dreams, but also apparently speak in full sentences just feels wrong, I guess. There's also the various other vessels we see it apparently have as follower cards, which seem more well put together than the scarecrow body it uses in Demacia. It also appears to completely change hunting tactics based on region, which could maybe be seen as a reflection of what the collective populace of different nations are afraid of, though whether or not that's intentional is hard to say. Lastly, let's discuss Aatrox for the billionth time on this channel. Look, if you've been around here long enough, you know that I have a lot of feelings regarding the Darken and how they were handled since Aatrox's initial release. We're not going to get into all of that this time, though. Rather than rambling about what I feel Aatrox could or should have been, we'll focus on what he is in the current lore. And the answer to that is supremely underwhelming. So, one of the biggest issues with new Aatrox has always been the question, can he actually end the world? Does this guy represent an apocalyptic threat to Runeterra on a scale similar to the Void or the Shadow Isles? LOR seems to want to say the answer is yes, while at the same time giving us a resounding no. They finally gave Aatrox his own major story event with the Darken Saga, in which he gathers all the other Fallen Ascended and tries to storm Mount Targon to wage war on the Aspects, only to get completely overshadowed by a totally new villain that came completely out of nowhere. I do not care for Zelani. I don't understand why Riot felt the need to incorporate a rival Darken for Aatrox. Her inclusion really makes the whole Darken saga feel extremely confused. Because, Aatrox is calling all the Darken across Runeterra to unite against her as payback for the apparent betrayal during the Great Void War, while at the same time trying to slaughter the Aspects because that will allegedly cause the end of the universe and grant them peace, maybe. I mean, Zelani straight up usurps Aatrox as the final villain of the arc, merging herself with the aspect of justice and trying to put the world under a hemomantic mind control. Kayle and Rise have to team up to defeat her, but like, where is Aatrox at that point? Did he die? Did he fall under Zelani's mind control? It is absolutely wild to me that Riot finally gave Aatrox an opportunity to be the big bad antagonist they want to set him up to be, and yet he's also trying to be the protagonist who stops Zelani from taking over the world, while simultaneously trying to end it, I guess. Honestly, I have no idea what they were going for here, and I'm not entirely sure they did either. But I think that'll about do it for now. So what do you all think? Do you agree with my takes? What champions do you feel were given lackluster executions in LOR? Leave your thoughts and comments down below, and until next time, stay bright.